Hey YouTube, so today I want to show you how to pull a hub from a wheel bearing. I've actually already got this set up, and then I realized, hey, I need to film this, so here it is. Anyway, what you'll need is a slide hammer, and you'll need a hub adapter piece. Okay. Now I've already taken the wheel off, and I've taken the brake hub off. One other note that I wanted to add before I put this on here: you'll take like a little hammer, and you'll use the nut on the end of your axle, and you'll tap it a little bit to loosen this axle. That way it'll go in, and that way you'll have enough room to put this hub removal tool on here. Alright, so basically what you do is, once that moves out of the way, you mount this up by sliding it over your studs, and then you put 3 wheel nuts on it, and then you have the slide hammer. Okay, so what will happen is, as you hit this, it will pull that out. Gotta put some more nuts on there. But we're going to keep doing that until eventually that comes off of there. Also, when you're doing this, if your hands are sensitive, you might want to get like a glove or something. And hearing protection. Also, you can also spray in here. It'll make it a little bit easier, some lubricant to do that. It will create a lot of dust when you're doing this from the brakes, so you may want to spray and clean your brakes off. That way you won't have the dust flying around in the air. And it's also a good time to replace the rear pads if you're going to need to do that. But to replace the wheel bearing, you do not need to take all this stuff off. There you have it, your rear axle hub. Okay. So once that's out, that gives you access to the bearing. All right. On this particular one, you notice that you have a clamp that holds that in. So what you'll need to do is, a little winded, is remove this piece here. That way, when you take this out, you'll be able to slide the whole, wow, I'm winded. You'll be able to slide the whole, you'll be able to press this bearing out. Remove the brake plate. To do that, there's 4 screws in here, Allen wrench screws, and I've already taken those out to make this video short. But basically, Allen wrench, you'll take that out. Okay, screw. This is an 8mm Allen wrench. All right. Now, you'll notice once you do that, you may have to take a hammer and tap on the back of this to dislodge it. This vehicle I had to kind of knock it pretty hard because it's rusted, but this will actually slide forward. And so that you don't have to take all your brake mechanism loose, what you'll want to do is remove this screw here. We're going to remove that screw there, and that's the screw that comes down from the brake line, and we're going to remove this screw here. And that will allow us to move this whole piece here without breaking any of the brake lines. So we'll go ahead and take that off, show you what we're talking about. Those screws are 10mm. This one's a rusted 10mm. I'm probably going to have to use something different to get it off. That one's rusted. The bad thing about rusted vehicles is it's kind of hard to get the screws off. That one broke. Alright, so you see that clips that loose. I'm going to try to get this one off. Now we've got all this loose. We can't get this out of here because that bolt is broken, and I don't want to take the chance of taking it out, which is going to cause even more problems trying to get it back together. So we're going to leave that as is. But as you can see, that has sheared off and it's rusted together. So what we have to do is get this axle out so that we can clear and get to the bearing. So in order to get this axle out, and when you can't remove this arm, a quick, easy way you can do that is you remove this bolt, that bolt. Come on the other side and remove the bolt here. There's a bolt there and a bolt there. Remove those, then this whole hogshead will actually be able to rotate. And once you rotate it, you can rotate it around enough so that you can get this rear axle out. I'm going to take those bolts out and then we'll rotate it. We have the 3 bolts out on this side, that side. On the front, we've got these bolts out here, that bolt out, those 2 out on that side. And you'll notice now the hogshead is able to shift over to the left or the right and also tilt. And with the tilt angle in there, you get enough tilt angle, it gives you enough space so that you can, kind of hard to do with one hand, you can remove the axle. Okay? So now that we have that axle out of the way, now we can get to the rear bearing. And if you have the appropriate tool, you can take that bearing out of the car with it on, with the control arm still on the car. Normally, like I said, we would take this control arm off, and then we would take it and we'd mount it in that press right there, and we'd press that bearing out. But since this bolt is broke here, we're not going to remove that control arm. We're going to leave it there, and we're going to use some tools, specialized tools, to pull that bearing out as well as install it. Alright, so we're going to get the tool and line that up, and then we'll be right back. So this is the tool we're going to use to remove that wheel bearing. Okay, that's the wheel bearing press. And as you can see, I've got it mounted up here so you can see what it's going to look like. You put this through the bearing, that with a receiver plate, and then when you tighten that, it'll tighten that, and that'll actually pull that out. I'm going to mount that up so that on here, so that you can see how it's actually going to look. And then we'll get back. So that's how that mounts up. Okay, and it goes through, has a receiver nut there. On the other side, you have the apparatus here. So what's going to happen is we're going to turn this here. We'll hold this one on this side. As we turn this, what will happen is this will pull that through. Alright, so I can't really do this and film at the same time. I don't have a cameraman with me right now. So I'm going to go ahead and get it started. I'm going to find the right sizes and get it started. And then I'll be right back to show you how that comes off. Okay, so we got that mounted up. Now you just squeeze the trigger. See how it's starting to pop out? Now, you do need to make sure that this is straight. I'm doing it with one hand right now, so it's a little bit harder to get it straight, but I'm going to straighten it back up and go ahead and pop it out. And, but this is the setup, and this is what you need to get it out that way. Alright. Now, you will need a wrench to hold the nut on the back, the receiving nut on the back. And once you do that, and you have that held, you can simply just squeeze the trigger. Alright, hold that and do that. Just simply hold that wrench like so. Squeeze the trigger. see, it'll pull that bearing out. Okay. Well, now we're going to mount it up and get it set so that we can install the bearing, and then we'll put everything back together. But the hard part's done, getting all the old stuff out. And as you can see, you got a clear recessed surface in there. See how it's recessed right there? That's why you can't push it out the other way. All right, so we're going to put the new bearing in to get it mounted up, and get it ready so that we can mount it in the hole. Now, when you're taking the old one out, a lot of times they will fall apart into various little pieces and stuff. Don't worry about that. It's just part of the cleanup. Installation is going to be the opposite of taking it out as far as setting your press up. You'll have a sleeve here that's going to be bigger here. That's going to keep it from pulling in. That's going to cause you to have the tension, and this will tighten up on here. And as you tighten this is going to compress this and push this sleeve in. I'm going to go ahead and tighten it up and show you what that looks like. Okay, so now we're going to go back in with the bearing. You notice you'll line it up. You have a cup on this side. Of course, you still have that screw there, and then you have a pusher here, a pusher cup, or a receiver cup. And on this side, you have the nut as well as the plate to hold it there. You'll need to have something to hold the tension there, and make sure you line this up straight. Now, you may want to use like a hammer or something to tap it straight, and then put the tool on there and press it in. So we're going to press it in now and let you see what that looks like. Okay, I'm going to have to readjust my sleeve here because it's hitting on the bottom. But as you can see, that's already pressed in. Now you want to press that in to the point where there's like a little groove for the pin to lock that in there, the receiver pin to lock that in there, or snap ring. I'm sorry, it's got a snap ring on this one. All right, so we're going to seat that on in there, and then we'll put the snap pin in, and then we'll seat the hub. All right, so now that you have your bearing seated in there, you'll notice the groove there. All right, that groove right there is where this snap ring will be. All right, so we'll put that in. And this takes a special tool. My toolbox fell over. Look at that mess. Toolbox fell over on me a little while ago. So there's a mess in the floor now. But we're going to find that tool so I can show you what that looks like. It's basically like a pair of pliers with 2 points on it, and that will squeeze that down so that you can stick it up there in that hole. So let me sort through this mess and find those, and we'll get the pliers for that ring. Basically what happens is that goes there in that hole, that goes there in that hole, and as you squeeze it, it'll recess that. It'll make that smaller. Now this is a spring, so it's hard to do, so I'm just going to put it in. I can't really do both with filming, but we'll squeeze that down and snap that in there, and then we'll replace the hub. Okay, so now we have our snap ring back in there. Basically the way that snap ring works is you take this tool here, and like I say, it's a spring, so it's kind of hard to record and do it, but you squeeze that down and that will pull that out, and then you can pull it out. But you have to make sure this bearing is seated far enough. I mean, make sure that it is seated good, because if it's not seated good, you won't have enough space and you'll play hell trying to... All right, important step after you install your wheel bearing. One thing that you'll want to do, I had to pull this back apart to do it. One thing you'll want to do is make sure you put the brake face on there. I got busy videoing and went a little too fast. I didn't put that on there, but make sure you put the faceplate for the brake back on. And then after that, you'll install your wheel hub. All right. The next thing you want to do is install the hub. And the hub is installed the same way the bearing is installed. This is the wheel hub. Now, I will tell you this, sometimes when you take these apart, you know, you'll get like some of the old bearing left on there. You can use a chisel or a blade and cut that off. But this one, as you can see, the bearing, it came out clean from using the slide hammer method that we used. So to put this back in there, basically mount it there, just like you did on your other bearing. And then you're going to press it in as well. and you can use the same method. One thing that I do like to do that I recommend, the old bearing that came out is like the perfect size adapter for the bearing to go to push back in to recess it, because it's the same size. It'll make contact with the lip, and you can push it in, and you don't have to worry about it being too big. This first sleeve we used was a little bit too big for that hole. It was big enough to push it, but to recess it, we used the old bearing. So, now, you'll put your receiver plate and nut on the back, just like we did with the bearing. And again, this is kind of hard to hold the phone in that. Let me see if I can get it. Alright, put our nut on. Now when we tighten this down, it's going to compress, and it's going to press that wheel hub into the bearing. I'm going to tighten that up and get my air wrench and see if I can find someone to hold the camera for me. Just hold it. Alright, so now we're going to press the wheel hub in. We've got our receiver, our back plate there. We've got the receiver nut. Now we just stick the air wrench here and press it in. All right. Now we have that in there. Take this off. All right, that's your new wheel bearing and hub. Stop it. All right, so now we have our wheel bearing installed. This is what it should look like for you on the back side. One other thing I wanted to point out, on the tool, when you're using this, when you're seating your wheel hub, you will have this, instead of being turned like that, you'll turn it around like that, because if this is on the inside, it makes it hard for that to press in. So you need to turn it that way so you have a flat surface, and then whenever you squeeze it and lock it in, it'll seat properly. Just wanted to add that little note to you. Well, that's the completion of the wheel bearing assembly. Of how to replace your wheel bearing. The assembly is going to be the reverse of removal. Now we'll just basically put our axle back in. We'll have to hook this back up. We'll put our tie rod ends in and hook our shock mount up and put our brakes on, and this will be a finished, complete job. If you have any questions or comments, please post, chat, subscribe, share this with the world. I hope this makes the job easier for you. I did a video earlier on how about, the lady said that she had taken the car to another shop and they had repaired the wheel bearing on this side. And I got to looking and I was like, well, wait a second, none of these bolts have been broken. There's no way in the world it could have been done on this side. But then my mechanic was like, oh yeah, well, you're right, there's no way in the world it could have been done. Look at that axle bolt right there. Let me get some light on that so we can see that. Yeah. You can see right there, that axle has to come out in order to do that job. That axle has never been removed, and because that's flattened out, it ain't gonna be removed. So, but this side's done, and again, we're gonna put the rest of this stuff back together. If you have any questions or comments, please post, chat, and thanks for watching and spending time with me. Till next time. Have a great day. Oh yeah, and if you want to see a video on any particular job, let me know and we'll see if we